Okay, so look, we've got half an hour, if that's okay with everybody. So 30 minutes, which should be, I think, quite enough. And let's have a little listen, Elizabeth, through what you'd like to bring today.
Okay, so I'd like to bring a coaching situation. I've just started working with a new client, and it's part of a leadership program, and the focus is on emotional intelligence. So all the people in the program have done EQI 2.0 assessment and been debriefed. And the focus of the coaching is very much around raising and improving and developing the EQ of all the leaders in the program. They tend to be very, very task focused. So the person that I'm working with is from a completely different culture from me, although I have lived in the country of the person I'm coaching. Has some strengths in EQ, but some very, very, how could I say, areas that need strengthening and developing more, particularly around interpersonal relationships, empathy, emotional expression, emotional awareness. But I'm picking up that they're very resistant and don't really see the need for it. And when I start talking about, when I start questioning and asking about these things and how that would help, etc., the responses that I'm getting constantly is, my role is to get the team to make money, to deliver the business results. And I don't have time, and I need to solve all the problems. I don't have time for all this other stuff. And I'm finding that quite challenging, actually. And I think there's a bit of, in me, there's a bit of judgment going on as well. And I'm working with the person next week, and what I'd like from the group is perhaps to help me think about what's going on in my own head, but what are some ways to help her see that the shift that she needs to make in herself. And normally I wouldn't find this a challenge. So whether it's the COVID and we're doing it remotely, and she's working remotely as well, so she's not always meeting her team. They are now in Japan. We are starting to be back in the offices, so there are going to be opportunities. But that's my kind of challenge, dilemma.
Great dilemma, Elizabeth, and fascinating too, actually. I think many of us can relate to the dilemma. Now, I'm wondering whether you'd like to try this. If you have never done it, it can be quite useful. When you think about what Elizabeth has just told us all, I'm wondering if it might be a useful thing, Elizabeth, for you to turn your camera off, and for the other people, members of the group, to actually start to talk about what's happening for them as they hear this story, and how, what thoughts are coming that might be helpful for you, and some clarifying questions, no solutions, obviously, but just what's happening for them as they listen to this story. And before we start that, I would just love to ask you, Elizabeth, if I may, as you were telling us this story, what was happening for you? What were you aware of in your body as you were talking?
I was aware of myself leaning forward, and I'm also aware of a little bit of tension. I do feel a bit vulnerable, to be truthful.
Of course.
Bringing this up, as I know Barb a bit, I know Yves Pascal a little bit. I feel quite vulnerable here. But on the other, what else am I aware of? Yes, a little bit of tension, a little bit of tightness in my throat.
Okay. Right. So how about you turn your camera off, if that's all right? And we're going to have a bit of a supervision discussion here. So for the others of you, what's happening for you as you listen to this challenge that Elizabeth's got, and what are you aware of that's happening in your body, and what thoughts are coming to your mind? around this cultural challenge, I suspect, as well. Mm.
Yeah, I can start.
Yes, do, please.
So I felt uncomfortable. I wanted to move. I wanted to talk. I felt some pressure on my chest. So I was not at ease.
What do you think that was about, Yves Pascal?
So I can imagine myself in her position, of course. So there might be some transfer projection. What I'm hearing is, and what I'm hearing, and my assumption is, she wants to do well. So, and this question I'm asking myself is there a parallel process? I'm hearing a lot of. I've heard two but. So, is she task oriented, or how does she bring her EQ to her client? And I love the question she asked, is what shift she needs to make in herself. And this is for the client, but I would like to return that question to her.
Parallel process is so fascinating, isn't it? It happens all the time in these sessions. I'm always so interested. Thank you so much for that, Yves Pascal. Other thoughts from the team here? Barb, you look like you're about to say something and you're on mute.
And I'm on mute, which is really unusual. So picking up on that thought, I actually thought Elizabeth was wanting to know what is happening for her that is maybe stopping her dealing, speaking. She even said her throat was tight. And I wondered, is there something she would normally say? She said, I've had this before. For some reason, this is making me uncomfortable. And so I suppose it would be interesting to know why she's feeling that discomfort of speaking what's on top of her mind, what's going on for her with the client.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, I try to imagine myself in the same position. This is a kind of client that I've already met before. And I know that it's always a challenge. So it's not that I feel nervous about this situation, but it's really a difficult one. So I'm completely with Elizabeth. It's like the metaphor is how to find the small door in the big castle.
Yeah. The tiny little crack of possibility in it, isn't that right? Yes.
Exactly. So in such a situation, all my attention is focused on that. But
yes, it's fascinating. I think it's, it sounds such a, it's a deep cultural challenge as well to try and help somebody understand what the point of this is. I mean, get on with the task, you can do it. Why do I need to do anything else, really? What thoughts have you got, Paul? What's been happening for you as you listen to this?
So there's probably a couple, and like Barb, my curiosity initially, well, not initially, but certainly by the end, is around how Elizabeth does this normally. She said, this is normally not something that's an issue to her. So I'd be interested to explore that in the sense of maybe trying to find through that where her roadblocks might be, what's happening. the other thing that definitely triggered for me was an experience I had way back early in my coaching, which was something very similar, I think, and it sort of triggered that, and then the whole issue of wondering why this person has presented themselves for coaching. So maybe getting back to why she's there and what she's seeking from it. Although I suppose that seems a little bit apparent with the fact that she's done the EQ assessment. But it is always difficult, I think, when people and it seems from the way Elizabeth talks about it that there is a real lack of awareness of in what she's doing there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Triggered strongly when it was all about the results. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I've got another one, which I think goes on from what everybody said, and particularly what Paul just said, was the piece of, that mixed messages in organisations about, we want you to be, have high EQ, but, this is how you're evaluated. So, and I think that tension there is an interesting one. And does that exist, I suppose?
Also, I noticed that, that the one sentence was, the team is to deliver the money. So, I mean, it's, the word "the team" for me means that there are no people. There is a team, so something very abstract, I would say. No warm bodies. That's really an issue.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts before we bring Elizabeth back in? No. Elizabeth, would you like to turn your camera on, please? Oh, you're still there. Good.
Yeah, I haven't run away.
You haven't run away. Okay, so what's happened for you whilst you were listening to that?
Oh my, actually it was really, really interesting. One of the things that Barb said really resonated with me. It really reminded me of something that came up in the first coaching conversation, and that was the tension in the organization about delivering results, and also that my coach, she said, if you speak up and say certain things, you just get told, well, the decision has been made and this is what you've got to do. So, I hadn't really thought about that until Barb said it. So that was one thing that really kind of resonated with me. The other thing that really resonated, and I think, people mentioned, what's stopping me from speaking out. I think at the moment it's because we've only had one session together.
Okay.
And I don't feel that we have enough trust. This is somebody who's never had coaching before, doesn't really know what coaching is. So we're still walking that line of, are you going to tell me what to do and advise me, versus me learning to explore for myself what I'm willing to try and experiment with. So I think there's something about that there. I feel I'm walking that fine line yet of trust and things like that. Because I think normally I would say to, and I did start to say, so what's the impact for your team of you just really focusing on the results versus helping and solving the problems for them versus you getting them to think about problems and etc. And it came back a bit. I could see her start to think about it, that there's a little seed there that actually perhaps part of her leadership role is to start doing that. But I know when we had the chemistry meeting, she was very clear that she doesn't believe in spending time getting to know people. Just get on, do what you've got to do. You know, if she has to make a presentation or talk to the team and she's allocated 30 minutes, she says, well, I use 5 minutes, and then say, right, let's go, let's start. And I think there's also a cultural element there. She's not Japanese. This is not a Japanese cultural phenomenon. This is a different culture. It's actually Chinese.
Yeah.
Working with a team predominantly of Japanese, but there are other nationalities in it. So I also think there's somebody said about the cultural dimension. I do think there's a bit of a cultural element. So, and I'll shut up now because those were the things that came up for me.
Great. With the rest of you, the team, what other thoughts have you had now listening to Elizabeth expanding on your ideas, on your feelings? And Elizabeth, actually, just one question before we go to that. Now, when you become more aware of, or even more aware, more acutely aware of what's happening in your body, what is happening now? Where are you sensing this?
In my stomach, my throat feels better. Actually, the tension in my throat is lessening, but I'm still feeling some tension in my stomach.
What do you think that's trying to tell you?
I think it's something around courage. I think there's something in me there that's saying, actually, I have to have the courage to call this out.
Interesting.
Because it's going to help her. But the other side of it is I'm a little concerned that she will respond in a negative way or be what's the word? Feel that I'm being very critical.
So you're judging that you might be judging her.
That I might be judging her, yeah. And as I said at the very beginning, I do feel that I've got a little bit of judgment going on with her because I can't understand why she can't get it. You know, you won't get the results on your own. You have to work through the people that are with you. And if you want to continue being a leader and she wants to get promoted, she needs to be able to work not just with her team, but also with her peers and the wider organization and build those relationships.
Michelle, you said something when Elizabeth had her camera off about there needing to be like a little, and I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was about having this tiny piece of potential that you could then, you know, start to expand. And I'm thinking that that's possibly what you've just talked about, Elizabeth, that, you know, that there, when you were saying to her at the beginning about how her team might be able to help her, whatever it was, she seemed to have a flash of understanding that she doesn't actually have to do it all herself, but others could help. Michelle, would you like to expand on that thought for Elizabeth, please?
I have to say that right now I'm blocked because my partner in life is Chinese. And so, of course, it's creating,
yes,
in fact, when Elizabeth told that, I started to scan in the Chinese people I know, Chinese women I know. There is that kind of attitude, I would say. And then I said, yes, I know some Chinese women who are like that, with that focus on delivering and being pushy with that. But so my brain was mobilized on that question.
Yeah. So you became a bit frozen in thinking about the culture. Very understandably.
I was not fully with you. And so it's difficult for me to answer your question right now, I have to say.
But isn't that fascinating, Michelle? That, you know, those sorts of things can make us freeze, and imagine, you know, in a session how that can happen to us as well. That we, you know, I know it's happened to me many times, you know, that you freeze when something like that happens. I just think it's an interesting aside, actually. Yeah. So,
yeah, in fact, the fact is, I imagine Chinese people softer than what Elizabeth described.
Yeah.
So, on a cultural point of view.
It just seems to me, Elizabeth, that you know what's happening for your person is that they just, it's kind of like they've transported to the other side of the world, because this is a whole different way of thinking about things that they've never thought about before. I mean, they've been there to do a task, they're doing the task, so what's wrong with that? So yeah. Now, you've lived in Japan for quite a while, I think, haven't you? I mean, I'm wondering whether you've ever experienced these sort of cultural issues before and how you've dealt with them.
Yeah, I have. I've lived in Asia for a very long time: China, the Philippines, India, and Japan. So how have I dealt with them before? I think my general strategy actually is to be is to try and be as patient as I can, and just do things. I would say small steps rather than giant leaps, so that sow the seed and just water slowly.
That's lovely. Yes. So putting a little bit of, we have a very good fertilizer here in Australia for the garden called Dynamic Lifter. So you just want to put a little bit of Dynamic Lifter on at a time, right?
Yeah.
Not too much, yes. And where does courage fit into that?
I think this is something really interesting, and I've been pondering it for quite a while, because I don't know whether it's an outcome of the pandemic or something else that's going on, but I found myself sometimes feeling that I lack courage to really call things out. And deep inside me, that's not like me. People who know me really well will say, Elizabeth will tell you what she thinks and call a spade a spade. So I'm just wondering whether there's something linked to the pandemic where people have just had to deal with so much and so much complication and so much difficulty that the kind of compassionate side of me doesn't want to make them feel more stuff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's perfect.
And more challenge, etc. But deep inside me, I know that at some point, maybe we haven't reached the point yet, I will be doing her a disservice if I don't help her understand that better, particularly as it was also feedback she got from her managers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yves Pascal, what's happening for you as you're listening to this?
Yeah. So what I noted before, there is something around the time and timing, definitely. And my wife is Chinese as well, like Michelle. And knowing the person is, so the client is Chinese, it takes time to build up relationship with Chinese. So my question is also around, okay, how long is going to be the coaching? If you look at the timing, so because if it's a 3 session, 6 session, 18 session hours, it's not the same. So there is something around the timing that I'm hearing.
So the patience bit is very important.
Yeah, the patient, and the question is, how long can Elizabeth be patient?
Absolutely.
Because how many hours does she have with this person and so on? Or maybe a question could be, we have this amount of time, how can we accelerate the process of being together and open together?
Paul, you look like you're about to say something.
Yeah, what's gone through my mind, especially with this question of wanting to do everything herself, I'm wondering if we're dealing, this is completely aside from culture, whether we're dealing with a perfectionist here, because some of those behaviors and things are very consistent with that. And perfectionists, of course, they think that this is a great virtue. They never understand that, in fact, it's as Brené Brown would put it, it's a yoke around their neck. So I think it would be worth exploring that. One of my questions around that is seeking to understand how tired they are at the end of every day, because perfectionists will nearly always tell you they're very tired at the end of the day because they have to put so much into it. But
thanks, Paul. Now, I'm very aware of time, and we have precisely 2 minutes left together with a half hour. And I thought, so this is possibly, maybe we've come to do as much as we can together. Elizabeth, how are you sitting with all of this?
I thought this was really a fantastic experience. I felt very comfortable with everybody. Thank you very much. It's really given me some more food for thought. I hadn't thought about the perfectionism. So I think that's something I need to be aware of and potentially look for more signals or explore. I think timing, I do only have 6 sessions with the person, and we're on and it's very boom, boom, boom. It has to be done. There's no leeway on the timing. So I think that reminder about building the relationship, but also, being conscious of the time and thinking about how do we accelerate this together.
Yes.
What will work for her so that I can support that. I think that was really helpful. So, and everybody's comments were useful for me to go away and reflect about as I prepare to meet the client next week.
Fantastic. Well, good luck with the courage, that's what I can say.
So yes, it will come out. I feel it bubbling up.
Yeah, I can feel it too, actually. That's great. So before we wrap up, if I'd just like to go around the group and ask you for, what you're taking away from this experience today that could be useful for you.
I think it's just great to get to see the different perspectives and how collectively we can help each other, and indeed how it makes me reflect on what I'm thinking and hearing.
Thanks, Paul. It's lovely. Thank you.
I'd say how easy it is sometimes in my own mind to go down a rabbit hole. And then need to pull myself back up. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Michelle, what about you?
Well, I feel a bit guilty. I think I could have done more. But we've done our best, and that's it.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. And what about you, Pascal?
Yeah, it's a reminder that, as Paul said, creating the space, taking distance, having other people looking at our subject is extremely powerful.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you all for playing with me today. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. So I think everybody could probably turn their cameras back on again, and please. So we've got a few people still.
Well done, Monica. How would you like to unpack with the group?
Well, I was just wondering, what they found interesting, actually, and useful, perhaps, about this group demo, really. Very short though it was, but I also think it's quite amazing what you can do in the time. That always fascinates me, because I think, oh my God, half an hour, it's nothing, you know, but actually we did get somewhere, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
I was struck by the combination of structure yet openness. And so it was quite a structured process, yet that really seemed to provide the container and the safety and help build the trust quite quickly.
Thanks, Steph. It's great. I have to say, I do that on purpose. it is, yeah.
For me, Monica, I'm always it's really interesting to see the parallel processing appear any session that it's often that it comes to the forefront. And I think when we see that, we really get to learn a lot from that as supervisors, what it is to have that come up. So thanks for that, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Pauline. Other comments at all about the process? Anything else?
Yeah, maybe what struck me about the process was the pace. Like, it was a very regular pace of questions, rather short answers, but always deeper and deeper things coming in with personal and experience things. There was a really regular pace. I don't know how many questions were asked, but it felt really, really smooth.
Thanks, Antoine. Thank you. Other comments at all?
I really want to acknowledge you, Monica, for taking your client through this process, and to thank Elizabeth for bringing what she brought, which was not simple, not too complicated, but a really great case to work with. And it was wonderful to see the support of the whole group in support of Elizabeth's case, and just the flow and the, you know, it wasn't a it just kind of flowed. So you know, when Elizabeth went off camera and when she came back on, there was no, again, this is what we follow. It was just allowing things to unfold, which is beautiful.
Thank you. Elizabeth, I'd like to thank you, actually, because it takes a bit of courage to do something. Talk about courage. I don't think you've got any problems, actually, because to do this in front of a whole bunch of people you don't know, we're all on Zoom. I mean, it's a bit crazy, really, isn't it? So I thought it took a lot of courage, and I really want to thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Well, thank you. And if I can just comment back, I, as somebody who's training as a group supervisor at the moment, and also being in a group where I really don't know many people in the call, I really want to thank you for holding the space, and, as people said, making it look so easy when actually it's not easy. You know, it just felt so professional and so smooth and comfortable. I'm really looking forward to, I hope we can have the recording so that I can go back through and kind of get a crib sheet out of it.
Well, I have to tell you, there's been many years of, you know, I found it really challenging at the beginning because I had no training at the start. There was no training for group supervision, you know. There really wasn't. And in Australia, we've only, you know, thank God for Damien and Lily and people like that, because it's only recently come here. So those of us who are group supervisors have usually been therapists before, and we've learned it in our, you know, we've learned the group process through therapy and family therapy. I always used to think about my family therapy days and think, well, actually, this is a whole heap, frankly, easier than having a screaming family sitting in front of me. You know, I had to hold that in my head, because coaches on the whole are really very well behaved. Actually, they don't scream and shout at each other like that. But and it's been a long journey, I can tell you. But I think if anyone wants to do training in this, I mean, I'm not supposed to be doing this, but I would recommend Damien and Lily's course. I think it's terrific. I really do. Yeah. So I'd just like to thank you all again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah. And for all of the system, for bringing their wisdom, and again, those different insights and thoughts. It was really quite magical to hear all of that coming up. So we've got 3 minutes left, and I'd just like to say that there is no meeting for next month. So there is a break.
Okay.
And we'll resume again at the end of January, the last Tuesday or Wednesday, wherever you are in the world of the month. And Damien has said to me that there's no one scheduled to bring something to the next session or any of the sessions next year. So he's asking for people to volunteer to bring something to the session. So please do so. And yeah, we'll support it. This will support all of our learning. So, and I just want to check in if everyone's happy for the recording to be made available to others for other people's learning. Yeah. So for those, thank you. So for those who did miss Monica's wonderful session today, they can catch up on the recording. So, but thank you all. Lovely to see you all, and looking forward to seeing you next year, and happy holidays. So
thank you.
If you'd like to leave a word.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Monica.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Monica. And Janine. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Elizabeth. Bye.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks.